It was found that if you strip a man of his culture, prevent him from learning a new one, and separate him from his family, it does not take him too long to start feeling like a commodity. The West's naval architects competed to design slave ships where more men could be packed into less space. Gustavus Vasa was a slave who later bought his freedom. A reading from his diary recalls his abduction in 1756.
The sight of the ship filled me with terror when I was carried on board. I was put down under the decks, and there, with the loathsomeness of the stench and crying together, I became so sick and loath that I was not able to eat. 2 of the white men offered me eatables, and on my refusing to eat, one of them held me fast by the hands while the other flogged me severely. The closeness of the place and the heat added to the number in the ship, which was so crowded that each had scarcely room to turn himself, almost suffocated us. The air soon became unfit for respiration from a variety of loathsome smells, and brought on a sickness among the slaves, of which many died. The shrieks of the women and the groans of the dying rendered a scene of horror almost unbelievable.
When they reached America, slaves found auction blocks waiting for them. Any slave could be sold at any time. Slave markets were very effective socially. They broke up the black family. But even if you were a commodity, you remembered the last time you saw your mother. A slave described his own sale in 1858.
My brothers and sisters were bid off first, while my mother, paralyzed by grief, held me by the hand. Her turn came, and she was bought by Isaac Riley. Then I was offered to the assembly of purchasers. My mother pushed through the crowd to the spot where Riley was standing. She fell at his feet, entreating him to buy her baby as well as herself and spare her one child at least. Can it be believed that this man was capable of disengaging himself from her with such violent blows and kicks as to reduce her to creeping out of his reach? I was then 5 years old.
Slaves were sold at several markets in Charleston, and one of them has been meticulously preserved for visitors. Recently, a biracial committee was formed, and it has worked hard to build a new link between whites and blacks. Very little of what American cities have come to think of as racial turmoil has occurred in Charleston. But underneath the graciousness, old relationships are often found intact. Descendants of slaves work for descendants of slave owners. Mrs. Lionel Legg retains the tone of a past she cherishes.
So Daisy was my little playmate, my maid, my friend, and the daughter of old Catherine, who was a cook that we adored. And so all those years, we played together, and everyone was happy. We never heard of all these things that we hear about today. And there were nearly 100, an enormous rice plantation with many animals around, a beautiful old house, and about 100 colored people there. But we loved them. They were our friends. And then it's no disgrace to say they're like children. When we say that, it's because they are like happy children, some of them. Because they like to sit in the sun and rather than work hard. And they'd rather play than work.
If you could, would you paint a picture for us of what it was like on the plantation in your early days?
It was a lovely, happy time living in open spaces with many lovely colored people and animals and flowers and fields. My father had everything thoroughbred, from the pigs, horses, the dogs, and the people had to be thoroughbred. And we would get into a buggy with him and drive to the plantation from what we call the pine land where we lived. And we would spend, every Saturday this was, and we would spend the day in old Fortune, I can see him now, would give us dinner, and we would have a heavenly time. And old April, he was the dairyman. That's all he did, all he did was to skim the cream off of these great big bowls of clabber and put them in the wooden churn and churn this marvelous fresh butter. That was April's job. He didn't do anything else but love us and skim the cream.
the Southern white man just loves to say that, oh, our Negroes are happy. They like it. They like the way things are. If other people would just leave them alone, there wouldn't be any problem. And some, I think, really believed it. And I think that that's one thing perhaps that sort of thrown them off balance when all of a sudden their Negroes just weren't behaving the way they thought they ought to behave. You were just a doormat. And that's where the good relations came in. As long as you're a doormat, we have wonderful relations.
And in going into captivity, going into slavery, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, that was prophesied that because we disobeyed our God, law, statutes, and commandments, we was going to go into captivity on ships, and we was going to get sold to these damn people. You seen the smile and the thought process of that damn Edomite. It just made me angry, man. And then you see the Jake woman here, she said, you know, we were just a doormat to these people, man. These curses are real. The Israelites were sold. Wake up, Yasharallah. I want to end it with Shalom, Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakal Kadash, Iwalam Yum. Hopefully this was edifying. Brother Kazak came back at you with another video. Shalom.